terms of her political work, which obviously has a tremendous amount of resonance in terms of what's going on today, I mean, watching the film, it's still kind of, it's amazing to see how outspoken she was. Yeah. And can you imagine that kind of level happening in a performer today?
I think there's two things about that question. Like I'd like to say, I mean, I think today in 2015, looking at what Nina Simone was doing on stage in 1965, I mean, now you have performers of all color and gender, you know, speaking back to the audience and speaking truth to power and doing that. But when Nina was doing it as a dark-skinned African-American woman in America in that moment, that was plain, you know, that was just dangerous. And what she was doing as a woman at that time was, I think, very, you know, both very feminist, very, very brave, and, you know, of course, her social, political commitments towards social and racial justice were bold and yeah, I mean, you could definitely end up being killed, and many of the leaders did, of course. So I think that's one way of answering the question. And then, but you were saying that you were mentioning about what people today.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I think that, you know, while we were making the film, we were in the edit room, and, you know, Michael Brown was killed in Ferguson, Missouri, and, you know, what you would see on CNN was with the tanks rolling down the streets, you know, suppressing the you know, the outcry that was happening was the same as, you know, what we were looking at from, you know, 50 some years before, and that was quite striking. And then I think, you know, since that happened, and there's been, you know, growing consciousness and a growing movement, I think, you know, that Nina's voice, people are looking at her as they're seeing the film as a role, as a model of the way that an artist can engage in a movement. And I think that, you know, in the 60s, music, an actor, you know, is a huge part of the civil rights movement was music and concerts, and I think that today Nina's a sort of a necessary model for that kind of engagement.
And also in terms of, how do you think that people would have responded to you if Nina Simone were alive today? Because it's like, if she's, you know, and obviously, as you say, in the 60s, this is a time when you have, you know, there's incredible amount of racial strife. There's no one else like her. Do you think that that her voice would be better received today with, you know, with greater equanimity, or would it still be as radical?
Well, I mean, look, obviously things have changed, and to some degree, we have an African-American president. I mean, there are certain things that are different, and there are certain things that are very much the same. And I think that Nina, you know, in one of her late interviews, she says, you know, nothing's changed. I mean, this was her attitude about what had happened in America, and I think that there are a lot of people who would agree with her. But if she were alive, I mean, I don't know. I know that Nina's daughter, Lisa, you know, I met Lisa once when I pitched the film, and she was part of that process there that first day, and then another time when I interviewed her for quite a long time. And then before the film premiered at Sundance, we showed Lisa the film as a courtesy. And that was the first time she'd seen it, and it was, you know, presented to her as a complete film. And she said, you know, she sent me this note. She was living in France, and she sent me this note just saying, you know, I told my mom I would have her back before she died, and now I've done that. And I think she felt that her mother would be, you know, she would be rest easy with this. So that's what I can take from that.
That is high praise.